Hi, this is Ms. Lancaster. This is just a quick video introducing you to Chapter 8 regarding the media. So we really are looking at social problems with this social institution. A lot of times people don't really think about media as being a social institution, but it is an institution with its sole purpose of being a provider of information. Okay, so think about media is all-encompassing of a lot of different things. You know, most of the time when people think about media and think about problems, they immediately think of social media. But that's just one piece of media. Throughout history, there has been, you know, I oftentimes think about the bumper stickers that are on people's cars. I don't trust the liberal media. Well, the reality is media can be liberal, but it can also be very conservative. So if you're driving around with a car that says, I don't trust the liberal media, you should probably also have one on the other side of the car that says, I don't trust the conservative one either, because each of them are sharing the information that they want to share. Okay, so what we're going to be really thinking about this chapter is looking at how media can frame messages. Okay, we can go back to chapter 1. I think it was chapter 1, where we focus on how social problems actually became, you know, how we know what a social problem is, right? Is the way it's framed, the way the message is given. Okay, so it's very, very important to understand that media can shape what we believe to be an issue or not. So this chapter, I have shared some videos in relationship to confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is extremely, connected to media, because most of the time people like to only hear the messages that confirm what they already believe. And when they listen to messages that go against that, they stop hearing it, right? And that can be potentially problematic, which relates to media literacy, which is probably one of the biggest problems in relationship to media, is that today we are so connected to media that we're bombarded with all of these messages that many people don't know how to decipher through, how to sift through those messages that we get through. We can flip to social media and kind of really think about it. How many times have you seen something posted or possibly even shared yourself that was inaccurate, incorrect, right? Because we don't always know what's real and what's not real, what is true and what is not true. Okay, so a huge piece of media as a social problem is the media illiteracy that exists. So I've shared videos in relationship to confirmation bias. I've shared videos in relationship to media literacy. I've shared just one from Crash Course, but I really highly recommend, if you have time, to actually go through that entire media literacy Crash Course set, because it does have a lot of really great information about media literacy and the importance of it and the history of media, because media exists in order to provide messages. Okay, as a social institution, that's its part, right? You'll see in stuff, there's also a video that I've shared in relationship to a media panic, quite interesting one that I can still remember from my childhood, and the ripple effects of that are still existing today. Other things that your book talks about in relationship to media is violence, consumerism, obesity, eating disorders, cyberbullying, distracted driving, the digital divide. All of these things are all connected as various problems that are very much deeply related to media. So it's important to kind of get a grasp and an understanding of that. When we look at theory attempts to explain why media exists, right? What it's there for and how we get those messages. So from a functionalist perspective, everything in society has a purpose. It has a function, okay? And when things are, it creates stability and harmony. But when things kind of get off track, right, that's when there's something that's dysfunctional. So when we talk about media from a functionalist perspective, the purpose of media is to provide information, to be an alert system, right? It is vital information that it gives us, that vital information. However, it can become problematic when it frames certain messages and discourages others, okay? So kind of really think about that when it becomes dysfunctional. Now, if we flip over to other macro level theory, right, conflict theory, it would really kind of focus on how the inequalities that are in our structure are going to shape and determine what messages we are going to hear, what messages we're going to find to be important, right? Because it's deeply influenced by who controls the media, right? If we flip and we look at who actually does control our media, there's a very small amount of individuals that control our larger media sources, okay? So really kind of thinking back to that, who controls it, what's the ownership, what kind of messages are they giving us, could those messages potentially be oppressive in relationship to some groups, right? If I am part of a group that may not have the power or the ability to share my message as easily, I am less likely to be heard, okay? So that's that perspective when we really think about it. And then, of course, symbolic interactionism always focuses on the micro level, but it's deeply connected to the macro level, because it talks about how we have these meanings, right? How we learn these meanings and we learn these symbols through interaction. So we have to really kind of think about how media has shaped the messages that we ourselves understand, right? Stereotypes are deeply represented, right, in various media sources. When we talk about media, don't forget, we're talking about books, we're talking about movies, we're talking about social media, we're talking about television shows, right? All of these things that come about, our textbooks are media, right? So when certain images are portrayed more often than others, that's going to shape our understanding and our meanings that are going to impact how we see the world, okay? So, some of the specialty theories that are talked about this week, the constructionist approach, public arenas model, and the agenda setting, those all relate. Those are all very deeply embedded in symbolic interactionism, a little bit outside of that, but they have that perspective in place. Social constructionism talks about how we construct our meanings, right? How meanings are constructed in society. And when we think about that from a social problems perspective, we really have to step back and think about how does media construct what's a problem and what's not, okay? Then we relate that back to the functionalist and the conflict perspective, really kind of think about that, how that shapes our understanding. Okay, then that talks about the public arenas model, talking about analyzing the rise and fall, right? When something's in the news and then not in the news. Think about that. Just in stuff that has been happening over the last several months, we can really, really see some great examples of how things show up and are all in the news all of the time, and then all of a sudden kind of fade away, okay? That really is what the public arenas model is talking about. It's the rise and fall of the amount of attention that certain messages get, okay? So those that have, if we're thinking about it from a functionalist perspective and a conflict perspective, individuals are choosing, right? People are choosing which messages are most important for us as a society to hear, right? And that comes down to what's the agenda and why do we want some things to be important while we don't want others to be important, okay? So step back and really think about it from a sociological perspective. Try to step away from your own confirmation biases, step away from our own biases and think about that, okay? And then the third one is agenda setting theory. And agenda setting theory emphasizes the role media plays in influencing public interest and public understanding, okay? All of these are very, very connected, okay? All of the theories, always remember that theory is really just an attempt to explain what's going on in society. So you'll see overlaps with these theoretical perspectives. No one theory can explain everything, but all of them can play a huge part in understanding a lot, okay? So what do I want you to really understand? Media literacy, confirmation bias. Take a look at the various social problems that do exist in relationship. Remember, when your book is talking about some of these issues in relationship to obesity and violence and things like that, they're not saying there's causal relationships. However, they are saying that there are some clear indications that there could be some relationship in the fact that when we talk about obesity, when we talk about violence, our meanings are shaped by media, okay? So really, really step back and think about that, okay? Again, watch the videos that I've shared. Do your issues and controversies, do your discussion board posts and your quiz, and have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions.